The press conference that cost Patton his army. George Patton had survived the slapping scandal, public reprimand, and months without a combat command. Then the war ended, and a few sentences about former Nazis did what German armies had not. In occupied Bavaria, Patton defended keeping compromised officials at work. Reporters pressed him. He compared Nazi Party membership to ordinary American politics. This time, Dwight Eisenhower decided the liability had become too great. By September 1945, Patton was both commander of the Third Army and military governor of Bavaria. His tanks were no longer racing east. His officers now supervised police departments, courts, food distribution, displaced persons, damaged utilities, and German civil servants. The immediate problem was brutal. Rebuild a functioning administration without allowing the people who had served Hitler to control it again. Allied policy called for denazification. Nazi organizations were dissolved. Important party members and supporters were to be arrested, investigated, or removed from positions of influence. The objective was not simply punishment. The regime had penetrated local government, business, education, law, and information. Leaving the same personnel in charge risked preserving Nazi power beneath a different flag. The paperwork made the mission look manageable. Germans completed questionnaires about party membership, offices held, organizations joined, and benefits received. Military government teams checked names and records. But millions had belonged to the Nazi Party or affiliated groups. Some had joined from conviction. Others claimed career pressure. Almost everyone had a reason to minimize responsibility. The forms were routine. The judgments were not. Patton saw the process mainly as an obstacle to order. Bavaria needed administrators who knew how to run railways, hospitals, power systems, and local offices. Many experienced Germans had Nazi connections. Removing them created vacancies that American officers struggled to fill. Patton believed the occupation was discarding ability for political purity. That concern was real. His solution carried a different danger. He repeatedly treated broad party membership as evidence of accommodation rather than guilt. In an August letter to Eisenhower, Patton argued that civil servants under Hitler often had to make gestures toward Nazism just as American office holders worked within the dominant political party. The comparison reduced a dictatorship built on persecution and aggressive war to patronage politics. It blurred followers, opportunists, believers, and perpetrators. The argument became attached to Fritz Schaefer, the American-appointed minister-president of Bavaria. Schaefer had opposed Hitler's movement before 1933 and had later been imprisoned by the Nazis. But investigators also criticized members of his administration and the slow removal of compromised officials. American occupation authorities dismissed him in September. Patton resisted the pressure surrounding the decision and believed experienced Germans were being removed too mechanically. The dispute was larger than one Bavarian politician. Patton's military government had acquired a reputation for weak enforcement. Critics accused Third Army authorities of tolerating former party members in public positions and failing to grasp the political purpose of occupation. Patton believed Washington and Eisenhower's headquarters were imposing rules from a distance. His superiors believed he was treating a central Allied war aim as an administrative nuisance. Then Patton faced reporters on September 22nd. Asked about denazification and Bavaria's government, he defended his approach. He said he had never understood the necessity for sweeping denazification and suggested that much Nazi membership had been opportunistic. Most damagingly, he compared the political dispute to a contest between Democrats and Republicans in the United States. The analogy traveled faster than any explanation attached to it. The war was barely 4 months over. Allied troops had opened concentration camps, photographed bodies, questioned survivors, and forced nearby civilians to confront evidence of mass murder. At Nuremberg, prosecutors were preparing cases against the regime's surviving leaders. Against that background, Patton's comparison did not sound like a technical argument about staffing. It sounded like the military governor of Bavaria was trivializing the system he had been ordered to dismantle. The press reaction was immediate. Patton attempted to distinguish ordinary Germans from committed Nazis and insisted that he hated the regime. But he did not clearly withdraw the political comparison. He had once again turned a difficult command issue into a public controversy centered on his own language. The policy problem remained complicated. His answer was simple enough to print. That made it devastating. Eisenhower had already spent years protecting Patton from the consequences of his behavior. He valued Patton's aggression, speed, and ability to command armies in combat. He had also forced him to apologize after the Sicily slapping incidents and kept him out of the Normandy invasion's opening phase. In 1944, Patton's military usefulness justified another chance. In occupied Germany, the calculation had changed. The shooting had stopped. Patton met Eisenhower on September 28th. The surviving record supports a clash over occupation policy, discipline, and Patton's inability to control the damage caused by his statements. Eisenhower removed him from his military government responsibilities. Days later, Patton also lost command of the Third Army. He was transferred to the 15th Army, a headquarters assigned primarily to complete a historical study of the European War. The official action did not prove that every practical concern Patton raised was false. Denazification was inconsistent, overloaded, and difficult to administer. Later American policy became less sweeping as the occupation authorities faced economic collapse, administrative shortages, and growing tension with the Soviet Union. Many former Nazis eventually returned to professional and public life. Patton had identified a problem. He had not handled its moral weight. His approach also protected more than indispensable technicians. Every broad exemption created space for Germans to describe themselves as harmless followers. Victims, displaced people, political prisoners, and returning survivors faced institutions still staffed by men who had adapted successfully to dictatorship. Administrative experience was useful because it had been gained inside the regime. That was precisely why the experience could not be treated as politically neutral. Later retellings often fold Patton's removal into claims that he was punished for wanting war with the Soviet Union or for revealing some forbidden strategic truth. He did hold fierce anti-Soviet views and spoke recklessly about future conflict. But the documented crisis in September 1945 centered on his administration of Bavaria, his resistance to denazification policy, and his public remarks. The record is damaging enough without inventing a conspiracy. Patton had built his wartime reputation by acting faster than cautious superiors thought possible. In Bavaria, that same contempt for restraint failed him. He saw skilled administrators where occupation policy demanded political scrutiny. He saw an inefficient purge where others saw the unfinished work of defeating Nazism. His battlefield value had once outweighed his words. After victory, the words became the decision. The irony was severe. Patton lost the Third Army not because denazification ultimately worked exactly as planned. It did not. But because he publicly dismissed the principle before its failures were fully visible. America later accepted